Sultan Suleiman, seen fit to the nickname of Magnificent in the West and the Lawmaker in the East, was certainly one of the greatest rulers the Middle East had ever seen. He won countless military victories and solidified his victories with administrative reforms. Yet his reign was not without its scandals. In 1553, he ordered the execution of his eldest son, Mustafa. But why? Why would a man order the death of his own son? Before we get to the video, please subscribe. We are very close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, which will allow us to make money of our content. Enjoy. War, glamour, and glory are often the words used to define Suleiman's reign. A young, powerful king who rides from victory to victory and spends the rest of his time with the most beautiful woman in the world. Yet Suleiman the Magnificent had an extremely long reign that lasted for half a century, and it came with its ups and downs. By 1552, he was an old man for the standards of the time, at 58 years old. It had been 26 years since his great victory at Hungary, and 16 years since his conquest of Iraq. And the last decade and a half hasn't been very kind to Suleiman. His siege of Vienna had failed, and the Ottoman Empire fought fruitless yet long wars against both Austria and Safavid Persia. As a result, the empire was hit by high inflation and economic stagnation. And worst of all, Suleiman was sick. He was suffering from severe gout and had disappeared from public eye. An empire with bad economy and an absent emperor was not a stable place to live. This was the climate Prince Mustafa lived in, and his princely resume was impressive enough to present an alternative to the people of the Ottoman Empire. Let's rewind it back a little bit. Prince Mustafa was born in 1515 to Mahidevran and Suleiman, who was a lowly prince back then. Mustafa was an impressive child, as when he was 9 years old, the Venetian diplomats reported that Mustafa was extremely talented and was adored by the soldiers. At the age of 19, he was sent to Manisa as the city's governor. Manisa was the traditional seat of the Ottoman crown princes, which befitted Mustafa's rank as the oldest son of Suleiman. Mustafa ruled his city skillfully and justly according to Ottoman sources, and gained the love and respect of his people. However, the following years were not extremely kind to the crown prince. Sultan Suleiman had grown affectionate towards famed Hürrem Sultan and stopped seeing Mustafa's mother, Mahidevran. This passionate love resulted in Hürrem Sultan growing her influence in the capital. She had given birth to 5 sons, which had solidified her status in the eyes of her husband. And she naturally wanted one of her sons to succeed after Suleiman. For according to Ottoman succession laws, princes that did not ascend to the throne would be executed to prevent civil wars. This meant that if Hürrem failed in installing one of her sons as the Sultan, they would all die. Eventually, 2 parties formed in the capital. On one side was Grand Vizier Pargalı Ibrahim Pasha, childhood friend of Sultan Suleiman and the second most powerful man in the empire. Ibrahim Pasha supported Mustafa as the crown prince. Meanwhile, on the other side were Hürrem Sultan, who held massive influence over her husband, and the second vizier, Rüstem Pasha, who supported Hürrem's sons. Suleiman was basically left between his dear wife and childhood friend. This balance of powers was disrupted when Ibrahim Pasha was executed in 1536 and Rüstem Pasha was appointed in his stead. This swayed the balance of powers heavily in favor of Hürrem's sons. The alliance between Hürrem and Rüstem Pasha was further strengthened in 1539 when Hürrem's daughter Mihrimah Sultan married Rüstem. Mustafa was growing more and more isolated every day. 1541 bore the first fruits of Hürrem-Rüstem alliance. Presumably influenced by his second-in-command and wife, Sultan Suleiman gave Manisa to Hürrem's eldest son, Prince Mehmet, and sent Mustafa to Amasya, which was far away from the capital. This move had a tremendous symbolic meaning. This meant that Sultan Suleiman preferred Mehmet over Mustafa. This news caused major upheaval in the army, who supported Mustafa, and Suleiman was forced to announce that he still considered Mustafa as his heir, and the move was solely made to secure the eastern borders of the empire. This was one of the breaking points for Suleiman. Mustafa was growing more powerful every day, and he clearly had the support of the military. Prince Mehmet died in 1544 at a very young age and unexpectedly, and another son of Hürrem, Selim, was appointed in his stead. Upon this, Mustafa sent letters to his father, asking to meet face to face to discuss the matters of succession. However, Suleiman ignored his letters and did not write back. This confirmed to Mustafa that his father was playing favorites, and his father was determined to make sure that the throne went to one of Hürrem's sons. Meanwhile, Mustafa was growing more and more popular. He was described as a generous, charismatic, and a just ruler. Every Friday, he would go to the mosque and give speeches to the crowd there. On the other hand, Suleiman's fortunes had started to turn. Expensive campaigns in Persia and Germany had drained the treasury. Taxes and inflation were at an all-time high, and the military was discontent due to Suleiman's old age and inability to attend campaigns. The people of the empire wanted to see a young and energetic man leading them. A Venetian diplomat that visited Amasya wrote that he was very surprised Mustafa did not take the throne by force. He noted that both the military and the common folk preferred him to his father, let alone his brothers, and he was amazed that the young prince still remained loyal to his old father. And this would not be a first in the Ottoman Empire. Suleiman's father, Selim I, had seized the throne with a military coup. It is certain that both Hürrem and Rüstem whispered this to Suleiman's ears for years. Your son will do what your father did. He will take your throne by force. In 1552, Mustafa decided to finally act to secure the crown. For years, he had seen the throne slipping further and further away. He wrote letters to the governors of the Ottoman Empire, explicitly asking them for help during the succession. That same year, Suleiman was forced to cancel a military campaign, as he no longer could ride due to severe gout. This caused discontent among the Janissaries. Some commanders even started discussing a coup to replace Suleiman with Mustafa. Rüstem Pasha, meanwhile, wanted to act before Mustafa grew stronger. On one hand, he wrote a letter to Safavid Shah, Tahmasp, pretending to be Mustafa. He offered the Shah support against Suleiman. When Tahmasp wrote back to Mustafa, Rüstem Pasha showed the letter to Suleiman as proof of Mustafa's alleged treason. Suleiman was yet to be convinced, however, and brushed this off as a Persian trick. Rüstem, however, had another trick. On one hand, he wrote to Mustafa. He advised the young prince to demand the command of the Persian army. He promised Mustafa glory, which would surely secure his succession. Mustafa took Rüstem's advice. He wrote to Suleiman, asking to be given the command of the army at the Persian campaign, and promised to throw Persia at his father's feet. Now on the other hand, Rüstem went to Suleiman and told him that this was an attempted coup. If Mustafa was given the command, he would surely turn back and march on Constantinople to dethrone Sultan Suleiman. After years of paranoia and whispers from Rüstem and Hürrem, Suleiman was finally convinced. He marched to Konya and called Mustafa to his camp, promising him the command of the army. When Mustafa finally came, he was seized and strangled to death, along with his close servants and commanders. It is said that Sultan Suleiman watched his son's execution behind a curtain and cried as he was strangled. The next day, Mustafa was officially accused of conspiring with the Persian Shah. His body was wrapped in Persian rugs to symbolize his treason, and he was given a traitor's burial, a nameless grave. The soldiers in the army were outraged to hear their beloved prince's death the next day. It became so violent that Suleiman had to show Rüstem as a scapegoat and sacked him from his position to calm the troops. So at the end, all the scheming did not do much for Rüstem. Mustafa's death led to Hürrem's oldest son, Selim, ascending to the throne. Selim was a subpar sultan who was into drinking and spent many days in the harem. Ottoman history enthusiasts still like to speculate what could have, would have, might have happened if a capable man like Mustafa succeeded after Suleiman rather than Selim. This is all pointless talk, of course. Empires are not built or kept alive by great men, but by strong institutions. In all likelihood, Mustafa's death had little impact on the Ottoman Empire. And Selim was not as horrible a ruler as he is said to be. He didn't want to rule, but he knew to delegate power to capable men, and his reign was defined by great second-in-commands, who ruled the empire masterfully in Selim's stead. All in all, Mustafa's death put a tragic end to the life of one of the greatest Eastern rulers. A footnote in Suleiman's story maybe, but a part of the horrible reality of the Ottoman Empire. Mustafa was neither the first prince to be killed, nor the most innocent one. Dozens of innocent babies and small boys were murdered to prevent potential civil wars, as killing a dozen babies were the lesser evil compared to the destruction of a civil war. At least that's what the Ottomans argued. Thank you for watching our video. If you liked our content, please subscribe and feel free to leave a like. And we will see you in our next video.